I'm Jeff St. Pierre, and welcome to episode 166 of the Adult Education Podcast. Hope y'all are doing great. Today, we are heading to Mystic Falls, Virginia, to discuss the history of the show The Vampire Diaries with Samantha Highfill. I'm in my 40s, so I do remember a time when we used to plan our days around the TV shows or events that we wanted to watch. For example, every Thursday night in high school, everyone watched Friends. The world ended, so we could all watch Friends together. Now with the invention of streaming and social media, we get to watch things whenever we want. And while I do love not having to deal with commercials, and I enjoy the easy access to my favorite shows whenever I want, I kind of miss that waiting each week aspect and the being excited for a random Tuesday night because my favorite show is on. When I think back, probably the last scripted TV show that I actively planned my week around was The Vampire Diaries. This was a show on the CW that premiered in 2009 and lasted for 8 seasons and 171 episodes and had the most beautiful cast of people I have ever seen assembled in my entire life. It had a great run, and it really captivated an audience for nearly a decade. Samantha Highfill is an executive editor at Entertainment Weekly. One of her first gigs when taking the job was to cover The Vampire Diaries. Recently, Samantha dusted off her DVDs and reached out to the cast and crew of the show to tell the full story behind one of the biggest and maybe most surprising hits to come out of the 2010s. The book is called I Was Feeling Epic, an oral history of The Vampire Diaries. To say I was hooked on this book is quite an understatement. I am very partial to oral histories. I just enjoy hearing the story being told by the people who lived it because they always have insight that we as the audience would probably never know. Just trying to get this show off the ground was a huge undertaking, almost didn't happen. There were so many names of now A-list actors that were being thrown around as possible cast members. Samantha did a fantastic job here, and it was a real pleasure to speak with her for the Adult Education Podcast. So I hope you enjoy our conversation.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Samantha, thank you. Can I call you Sam? Do you go? What do you prefer?
Sam is anything's fine. Most people go with Sam.
I'm the same way. I'm a Jeffrey, but I'm like, whatever you want to call me is fine, but Jeff seems to be the most common thing that people go with. So Sam, it is such a pleasure to speak with you. This book is fantastic. I know I'm not the target demographic for The Vampire Diaries, but I will tell you I was a day one person. I watched the pilot, loved. I think it was like the last show that I really watched on TV every single week. Like I mean, I should say scripted show because there were reality shows I watched each week, but scripted TV shows, like I'm looking back, I think that was the last one that I really was into. Like I set my calendar, like each week at this time, we are going to watch The Vampire Diaries.
I know. I miss it. I will say a couple shows recently, like The Summer I Turned Pretty, got me back to being that.
Okay, but that's like Amazon Prime, right? Like it's a little bit different to me. Like watching through commercials on the CW on TV. Like I can't think of another show that I did.
I forget what I was watching the other day, but I had that exact same thought of, I was watching Gilmore Girls, and I was like, oh yeah, commercial breaks.
Right.
Like it's just, and I actually do think that's part of what makes Vampire Diaries so bingeable, is that it was written to those, in that 6-act structure, to those commercial breaks that like they were constantly throwing twists at you, and it makes it an incredible binge, but it's also what made it just so fun to watch live.
Yeah, there is something about those commercial breaks in the, classic form of television where like you're building up to a moment and there's like a pause, like, oh my gosh, like, okay, I can breathe again for a second, or like, what's going to happen next? Like you don't get that in the streaming shows the same way that you once did.
I know. Like as much as you hate a commercial break, it was kind of great. It gave you an easy opportunity to run to the bathroom. Like you were dying to know what came. Now I do miss it. I was the same. I would make sure I was home from work in time to watch The Vampire Diaries. By a certain point in the run, I was covering it for EW, so I would watch it with my roommate, and then I would have to recap it immediately. And then we would watch it again because I needed like a second time to really just get to enjoy it.
Let's get this question out of the way. Is The Vampire Diaries the most beautiful cast of people ever assembled for a TV show in history?
I mean, yes. I think that might be the easiest question I've ever been asked. I think it's yes. I think peak CW, like just known for beautiful people, and like it is freakish, man. Like that cast is pretty incredible. In my head, I'm like, I mean, the OC was pretty incredible, but like I think Vampire Diaries might take the cake on that one for
Even the
sure.
tertiary characters. Like I was just rewatching the
Yes.
first couple of episodes, just to kind of get the vibe back again because it's been a minute since I've watched these. And even like the people that are getting murdered in their car and in that tent in the first couple of episodes, even they're beautiful. Like even the guest,
Exactly.
like you're only in this show for 45 seconds and they're even stunning. Like I don't understand.
You have to be CW hot to
That's
appear
it.
on the CW at any point in time. And it was part of the magic of that network that I miss so much.
I'm glad you mentioned the OC, and I'm going to jump ahead in my questioning here because
Yeah.
I think something else the Vampire Diaries did, and I'm sure they sort of took from the OC playbook, was the music of the Vampire Diaries.
yeah.
I have not finished your book, so forgive me if you have a chapter about this in the book, but the music, I just was again, watching the first couple of episodes again, just hearing these songs, like some were artists that were on the rise, some were still more indie artists, and I was like, oh my gosh, the music builds such a tension in this show.
Yeah, it is incredible. I don't have a soloed out chapter on it, but certainly I call out certain moments throughout because I did talk to Chris Mollier, who was the music supervisor, who was incredible. And it was fascinating to hear some of my favorite music moments, I found out were like backup song. It was like we really wanted this song, but there's Damon and Elena's first kiss in season 3 is Holding On and Letting Go by Ross Copperman, which I love. I think that's such a great. And they were like, yeah, no, we wanted this Snow Patrol song. I think it was called New York or something. And they're like, but Shonda Rhimes had it, and if Shonda has it, it's Shonda's. And I'm like, that's incredible. Like all power to Shonda. That's so funny. But my favorite music story is probably the season 3 finale, which like I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the band's name, the Swedish band, but when the song that's playing when Elena's like drowning and we're reliving all of this is so beautiful and it's so incredible. And it was one of those where like I think were 48 hours from being live on air. Like the episode was going to air and they did not have clearance for the song because the band kept saying no. And Chris was like writing emails, and eventually they sent the scene to the band that was like, see how incredible this is and how perfect it is for this moment. And like they finally came, but I think they had to go back and forth with them like so many times. And thankfully somebody's younger sister in the band was like a fan of the show or something, and it came together. But that was one where they were like, we tried everything and nothing worked as well as that song. And like I think Julie eventually wrote them an email. Like they cared about the music in this show. And Julie and Kevin, I think Julie's phrase was always calling it like the music bubble of like really finding that, it's how Stefan and Elena kiss the moment that like Sarah Bareilles hits that note in Gravity. It's like finding that moment. And they just consistently did it like so many times over the years. I've always had a playlist on my Spotify. I think I call it my writing playlist, but it's just songs from the Vampire Diaries.
I love that. But there are a few shows that have really done that well. I think the OC, Vampire Diaries, Grey's Anatomy has done it really well over the years. Sure. I think Scrubs always did that really well too. Like they work in artists that maybe you're familiar with or something that you're going to like because of something else. And they find the perfect song to fit the moment in the show. I also find it hard to believe that there was a moment where they wanted Taylor Swift to do a guest appearance and guest performance like in the show, which I'm like, oh my gosh, could you imagine looking back on that?
It's so funny because Julie was not a big Swift person then. I don't know why I don't just say Swiftie. But now she's like obsessed, and it's so funny to hear her talk about it because she's like, in the moment I was like, no, it wouldn't make any sense. And now she absolutely would bend over backwards to make that happen.
You're like, why didn't we do this?
I know, but I'm so happy it didn't have. Even didn't they have Gabby Douglas on the show? They had I think she showed up in season 4 when she was like training for the Olympics or something. And even that like pulled me out of it a tiny bit. Like, Mystic Falls has to exist on its own and can't be anything like my real world.
I liked that point, and I also liked in the book you talk about, or I guess they talk about it because we're talking about the book. I should probably say that. I was feeling epic, an oral history of the Vampire Diaries. So you are collecting all of the stories from the people that were a part of the show. From the writers to the actors to the crew. You've got everybody in this book. And there's a moment where they're talking about you've got a show that you're building with all these supernatural characters, but there has to be a limit on power, because if there comes a point where someone just has, infinite abilities, well, it's not interesting anymore, right? Because how are they going to
Yeah.
lose? And I loved that forethought in that situation to think like, okay, we got to make sure we have a limit to something here.
Yeah, and like it definitely you can watch it back and you'll kind of notice where like sometimes they cheated a little bit
Mhm.
and sometimes, but yeah, specifically they always talked about it with witches, because when you have a witch, especially a very powerful witch, a Bonnie Bennett, an Esther, anybody, like magic can do anything.
Mhm.
Magic created vampires. So like couldn't, theoretically Esther just like makes Alaric an original in season 3. That kind of was like a new thing. And so I think they definitely played with it a bit over the years, but I think it was very smart early on to have like the nosebleeds, to have, as devastating as it was, to have Grams die. And it was like proof that witches can't just like do unlimited magic. Like
Mhm.
there are limitations, and those, will vary kind of depending on the situation and the power of the witch. But yeah, it's really funny to hear like Kevin Williamson talk about it, because he's like, it breaks my brain. I don't like witch possible for story. Like it's like he's like, I was kind of like hands off, someone make rules because this is too difficult.
And there was a point too, like I did finish the entire series, and I think it comes in waves. I think everybody with any show
Yeah.
that goes 8 seasons, there's going to be seasons you like better than others. But the
Yeah.
Klaus introduction, it started to turn me off a little bit, because Klaus had that sort of invincibility. He had that ability
Yeah.
to do whatever he wanted at any time, and nobody could stop him. And there was a point I was like, it's not interesting to me if you're always going to lose. Like you have to have a
Yeah.
point where you get a win somewhere. And it just seemed like with Klaus, I obviously he got introduced early in the series, so I stuck through
Right.
and continued to watch. But I was like, man, this guy doesn't do it for me. I was kind of surprised to see the originals take off the way it did, because I was like, this
Yeah.
guy's actually the reason I'm not loving it right now. I grew to like him, but at the
Yeah.
time wasn't my favorite.
Yeah, it's difficult. And it is funny when you go back and watch some of the early episodes, and they like really kind of play up and talk about like a young vampire is like, weaker, that like Damon is stronger than Stefan because there's also the blood factor with him, but like because he's older. And then you meet an even older vampire and they're strong. And then like that kind of goes away. Like
Mhm.
they'll bring it up occasionally, like Lexi will put Damon in his place and she'll be like, I'm older than you. And you're like, oh yeah, that's a thing. But yeah, they definitely, when there are so many rules, like you have to figure it out. And I mean, certainly on the originals, they found ways to make Klaus struggle. I think the smartest thing they did with Klaus was really give him like emotional
Mhm.
weakness, and they made his struggle just like loneliness and being a like someone who's so scared of losing everyone in his life. But yeah,
That's when I
like
got pulled into him. Like when he was just
yeah,
this like a-hole at the beginning, it was just like
yeah,
constant, I was like, oh my, I can't do this. So yeah, when they started to give him this emotion, I was like, okay, now I can kind of come back into this Klaus team and be like, all right, now I get it. I get this character more.
yeah. Michael shows up, and you're like, okay, I
Yeah.
get it. Bad dad.
Yeah, right. We've all had those instances, right? Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned Lexi too, because I think there's something interesting with this show where they had these characters that were just supposed to pop in and out here and
Yeah,
there that ended up becoming like Lexi was one episode. And she became this
crazy.
massive character. And I remember Anna too. Like I always had a thing for Anna. I thought Anna was
Yeah,
super cool. And she like there were people writing fan fiction about Anna online back in the day. I
yeah,
remember fan fiction online, folks. This goes back a few years. But like
yeah.
these characters that were not in the show for a long time, but had major impacts on the fan base.
Yeah, and that was really fun to hear Ariel talk about like the pressure of that. Like I'd never really thought about it from her perspective of like she had one episode in
Right.
which to make people fall in love with this character and care when she died at the 40-minute mark. Like that's how much time you have. And I
Her
was like,
explaining that in the book was so interesting. Like you relaying
right?
that through her words was so fascinating to me.
Same. I was like, I mean, why would I have ever thought about it from your perspective? But like, that's really interesting. And obviously, she nailed it because Lexi's death, it also just, by that point, we only kind of knew Stefan as like this brooding guy. And to see him be like, oh my God, he's jamming out to Bon Jovi. He loves his bestie. And then for his brother to do that was just like, the ultimate. Oh gosh, the storytelling, man, on especially in those early seasons is so incredible.
Okay, so storytelling. You're leading me right into all my questions. I love this. You're the best
We did
guest I've
not
ever
rehearse
had.
this, I
No,
swear.
not at all. But like I have this whole list of like bullet points of things I want to talk about, and you are just like hitting them left and right. So the storytelling, especially in the early seasons, because I have
Yeah.
not finished the book. I'm about halfway through. The beginning part was so interesting to me because it's like they wrote this pilot, they had this idea, but then the writers, Julie and is Kevin, Julie and
Kevin, yeah.
they're talking about like, oh crap, we need to have more ideas. Like they didn't have episodes written while the people are sitting around waiting to film. And to
Yeah.
me, that was such an interesting thing because like I would think you'd have to have almost a season planned ahead of time just to even get bought. But here they are like, oh, we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, it's actually bonkers that the story made any sense, like
Yeah.
in those first, and when you watch it back, it's beautiful. It's like, oh, they're planting this seed, oh, they're, and I'm sure half of it was intentional. I'm sure some of it was maybe a little bit of luck, but it is that, the 22 episode model, which still exists on some shows, but is certainly becoming more and more rare as time goes on. Just like that was such a beast. And certainly specifically their season one timeline when they were like kind of the last show to fill a slot at the CW. And then they just like had to go, and just hearing, I certainly knew that like how much of a struggle it was. And Kevin and Julie had talked to me about like, we didn't sleep for 3 years. And I believed it. But yeah, hearing like specifically with Haunted and Vicky's death, they were like,
Mhm.
that director didn't have a script. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they were like, no, we literally were like, here's a scene. And I'm like, how do you do that? Like, how do you make it happen? And it truly, like, I don't know how they produced any television, let alone good television in those early days, because I think thankfully they work well under pressure.
Mhm.
And that's when good storytelling comes out. But yeah, just like you think about the amount of like mythology in that show and what they had to do in every single
Yeah.
episode. And it's just like, it's really impressive once you kind of hear even more about like the behind the scenes of it all.
And you have a young cast on top of that. I mean, for the most part,
Yeah.
this was the first big gig for the majority of the people on this cast. So
Yeah.
to put them in a situation where they're just sort of sitting around twiddling their thumbs, waiting to hear what they have to do, that's got to be
Yeah.
stressful to them. Like, this is my first real role, and I don't even know my lines. Like, I don't know.
I know. And they're like all young and they're in Atlanta. So it's not like they can just like go hang out with all their friends are in LA. Like it's just, it was a really, honestly, it sounds like it was chaotic, certainly. But I think that's part of what like made the whole experience just like magic, was just, they all had to get through it.
Yeah, and they talk about how, like, yeah, you just mentioned they were in Atlanta filming, but that was before Atlanta became this big filming hub as we know
Yeah.
it today, like kind of pre-Marvel taking over the Atlanta world and all that. So they were kind of in the middle of nowhere in a lot of senses. And again, first big role for most of the cast, like they're trying to learn what's going on. And I almost feel like that's what made the show so believable, because it seemed like they were genuinely friends with each other.
Yeah. I think, I can't imagine being 22 in a brand new city on a hit show. Like that just feel like I'm like, I wish I could go back and like watch them all hang out. Like it feels like such a specific thing. And they are also like working crazy out. Again,
Mhm.
22 episode show, they are working their butts off and trying to find time to like also get to know one another. And yeah, it's just like something like that sadly will probably never really happen again.
Yeah.
But I think it's why, I think it's Trevino at one point kind of says to me, like, the older I get, the more I really appreciate like what we had. Because obviously in the moment, sometimes it was probably very easy to be like, we're killing ourselves. I hate this. But I think they mostly found time to enjoy it then, and certainly look back on it fondly now.
You obviously have done a lot more research on this than I have, but I've always heard over the years the cast largely is still very tight with each other. I'm sure there's some
Yeah.
folks that don't answer every phone call that comes their way, but I
Sure.
wonder, when putting together an oral history where you're trying to get in touch with everyone, did you have a very easy time doing that? Like, were they open to it? Were there any pushbacks?
Honestly, no. I mean, Julie was a huge help in terms of if I literally couldn't get in touch with someone,
Mhm.
she would help me. But once people knew about the book, there wasn't anybody who was like, no, I don't want to participate in a book. They were all really receptive. The hardest person to get was Joseph Morgan, and that was not at all. That was about like his schedule, and
That's
thought he
Klaus,
didn't have,
right?
yes.
Yes.
And is like so down to talk about the show. And as soon as we got on a Zoom, was a delight. But just for a minute, like as people know, if anyone got an advanced reader copy of this book, of which I think a few hundred people did, he's not in it. Like he is not quoted in that version because I got him so late in the game. And I really tried to use only my own reporting in this book, whether it be old or new. And I had interviewed him a bunch on the originals, but I had never interviewed. I was not at EW until season 4 of Vampire Diaries, and I unfortunately did not interview him for Vampire Diaries. So there was a version of this book where he was not quoted, and I was like terrified. I mean, he was still mentioned a bunch, and I felt good about that. But I was really scared that he was not going to be a part of it. And then at the last minute, he snuck in, and that was a huge sigh of relief on my part.
Was there anybody you did not get?
I mean, certainly I didn't talk to like Stephen McQueen. I didn't talk to for this book. That's old reporting that I thankfully had. I just simply couldn't get in touch with him.
He seems like he'd be someone that'd be hard to get in touch with. I don't know why I feel that way. I don't know him, but he just seems like he'd be hard to get in touch with.
He's not like super like around. He's not like on the scene. Like I think his former publicist was kind of like basically gave me like a shrug emoji that was like, I don't really know. And I was like, okay, that's fine. You know, thankfully I have a couple quotes from him and I can incorporate him. Would have loved more, but you know, it wasn't the end of the world. There's a couple people like that where it's old reporting. But for the most part, and like certainly all of our like main series regulars, I guess aside from Steven, he would be a series regular, were down to chat, which was great.
I want to go back to the beginning and the casting process too, because we know the cast the way that it shaked out, and I don't think I can picture anybody else in some of these roles. But there were some really interesting characters and people that were getting thrown around for roles. I saw Ashley Simpson at one point for Elena. I think it was for Elena. Jesse Bradford, who I haven't seen do anything in a long time. He was potentially going to be Damon. Jason Momoa was in he was from one of the brothers, right? I forget if it was Stefan or Damon, but one of them.
No, he was Alaric.
Oh, he was Alaric. Oh my God.
Yeah,
get out of here.
I know.
Can you imagine Jason Momoa as a teacher?
And it was so fun. The casting directors were like, in our defense, at first, it was much more vampire hunter.
Sure.
Teacher second. And I was like, totally, get it. No, talking to the casting directors was maybe my favorite part of this book. Like just because I never had. And I had heard, you know, actors remember bits and pieces. And so I'd heard people say like, oh, I originally read for Elena or David. But like, that's also super common to start with everybody reading for the leads. And so I loved the casting directors quite literally would pull it up on their computer and be like, this person read on March 7th, 2009. And I was like, this is amazing. Like this is incredible, because I also kind of wanted to limit it. I've read some books where they're like, they discussed, and they'll list like 50 actors. And I'm like, well, you can discuss anybody.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know who came into the room, who was actually really considered. So yeah, Jason Momoa, I think I screamed. I was like, what? That is so crazy. Sebastian Stan also got me, like that, which if you think about it, really makes sense.
He actually does make
Gossip
sense.
Girl,
Yep, I can see that.
They straight up wanted Matt Zuckery to be Damon. And like,
Matt Zuckery, remind me what he was in. What was his character? Like, what did he do before that?
So he had been Logan in Gilmore Girls.
Oh, right.
He didn't take it because he got The Good Wife.
Got it. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Some of the actors, I'm like, I know their name, but I can't think of what they did. I had to like IMDb a few of them and be like, right, that guy, Logan. That's right. I forgot about Logan.
Totally. Tessa Thompson for Bonnie.
Yeah.
Which, like, again, now you're like, Tessa Thompson is this huge movie star. But at the time you think about it, and it's like, oh, yeah, she'd done Veronica Mars. Like, it makes sense. So, yeah, there were so many just, like, fascinating details that I loved. Like, all of the casting. Oh, Bill Skarsgård for Klaus. I feel like nobody's talking about this. And I was flabbergasted. Because also I can see it. Mm-hmm. And not just because he plays Pennywise so well, but like that really got me. Yeah, there's just so that was absolutely one of my favorite parts of this book. I think it's so fun. Yeah, to just imagine like it could have been very different.
It's almost nice when you have a cast too, and I'm trying to think of other examples, but like when you have a cast of a show where they've all had other things that they've done outside of the show, but
Yeah.
that show is still the primary vehicle you know them as. Like nothing
Yeah.
else has outshined that moment yet. Like I think about Scrubs, for example, like Zach Braff had Garden
Yeah.
State for a while, where Garden State was outshining Scrubs. And to me, it takes a little bit away from that element, you know?
Yeah.
But like with the Vampire Diaries, as successful as all of them have been in their lives, like that is still the number one thing for all of them, seemingly,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's like, if Matt Zuckery had gotten it, he would have like had it would have been like Gilmore Girls versus Vampire Diaries for his entire
Mhm.
life. And so yeah, I think there is something again kind of like to their communal experience that's not as they do these conventions now that they can all get together and it's still like this is the thing. This is the thing that they know they're probably going to be talking about for their entire lives.
I'm going to put you on the spot here because I feel like after doing this project and studying the Vampire Diaries the way that you have to make this, I feel like I
Yeah.
have to ask this question. Most interesting or surprising thing that you heard that you were like, get out of here. Like that, there's no way. I'm just even reading it. I know we were just talking about the casting. I'm just going to kill time while you think about this for a second. Thinking about the casting, like some of those names blew my mind. Like the way they talked
Yeah.
about killing off Vicky in the first season, where they were just like, we're going to do that and just say, F it. Anybody could die at any time. Like you're all
Yeah.
on watch right now. Like there were so many decisions at the beginning process that I was like, wow, I never would have seen that. And that is so fascinating to think of the thought process that went into this show. So I'm wondering if there's anything
Totally.
that you have that stands out.
I mean, there's so many moments I feel like where I hung up the phone or the Zoom or whatever and instantly like called one of my best friends who I used to watch the show and was just like so excited. A lot of times it was casting. Um, One of the things which I don't know if you've gotten to if you're only halfway through, but obviously the one question the show never answered is what was in Liz's letter to Caroline that
Oh,
Caroline
right.
famously burned. And I will never forget being on the phone with Melinda Sue Taylor, who I believe wrote that episode. If she didn't write that episode, she was a writer on the show at the time. And even Julie, I had asked Julie, I'd said, like, what was in the letter? And she was like, we never wrote the letter. And I was talking to Melinda, and she was like, no, I know what's in the letter. And I was like, excuse me? And then she proceeded to just like tell me what was in the letter. And that was like, it made me cry. Like it was just like that was a really cool moment for me. Um, I mean, I think the biggest revelation was just well, I knew that I remember when I was on set of the series finale, I had talked to Julie about how like, the original ending for the show and how they had always planned for like the love triangle to kind of come back around and Elena to once again kind of have a choice or whatever. But I don't think I fully realized that that was still not necessarily the original ending, but the love triangle coming back around was still in play
Mm.
even after the season 7 that we had. Like I thought it died the second Nina left the show, and to hear them talk about like we tried to get Nina back for even 3 episodes
Yeah.
to see if we could do that. I was like, "Oh, we really tried to do that." Like I didn't quite realize. And then obviously like Nina really trusted me and I was really thankful to talk about like pay discrepancy and the
Sure.
role that played in her not coming back, which like she'd never said that. I had never heard that. Because I remember talking about like why they couldn't get her and the struggle to get her for only one episode and ultimately why we didn't get that ending. I'll be honest, a little part of the fan in me for all those years because I would have loved that ending. I think it would have been like really
Mhm.
full circle. I love a full circle ending. It's just I'm a sucker for it.
Same.
And I just like a little part of me always blamed Nina. I was a little bit like, man, if she had just come back for a season, we could have gotten. I love the ending of the show, but I do like the idea of that other ending has always stuck with me. And then to learn that, like, no, she was having to fight for what she deserved. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, Now I blame the studio.
And how do you not just pay the star of the show, by the way? Let's just go ahead and throw that out there.
I know. And so that was obviously really interesting to me. But there's a ton of also just like little things.
Yeah.
Like Candace and Joseph telling me a hilarious story about like he was supposed to be shirtless during their like big Caroline sex scene and didn't want to take his shirt off. Just like little stuff like that they were just like, yeah, there's it. Like, that's the kind of stuff I love too, of just like tiny details.
I'm that way too. Like, I like the tiny details. My wife has been rewatching The Tudors, and I was reading this book sitting next to her on the couch, and I kept did you check this out? And she's like, what do you want to tell me now? What do you want to I'm like, no, you've got to understand what they're doing in the, those are the things that really get me revved up. So I love an oral history. I just love oral histories in general, because I think it's so cool to hear the story from the mouths of the people that were on it. And I don't think I realized how badly I needed one of the Vampire Diaries until I saw this, and I was like, I must speak to Samantha about this, because this just seems like everything I need in my life right now at this moment.
I'm so glad. I felt the same way. So I just did it myself, but I loved doing these interviews. Like, I love this show so much. And so this was so fun. And I ignorantly went into it thinking, I covered this show for like 7 years. I know everything there is to know. And I came out of my first interview with Julie, I was like, okay, I've already learned like 5 new things. Like, that's so exciting.
I'm a little jealous you got to speak to Ian again. I did one interview with him around the Founders Day episode. They had him doing like a media tour, and he was arguably the best interview I've ever had. Like, just such a kind-hearted person. You could feel the warmth on the other side. Like, I asked him stupid questions and he didn't make me feel stupid about it. Like, some people would be like, oh, you're asking this again. Like, he was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're taking this time to speak to me, and I will never forget his grace in that setting. So I've always wanted to find an excuse to interview him again, but reading your conversations, I'm like, I can feel that already through the book, like just how good of a person he seems to be to everybody.
He's so kind and lovely, and it's just like so happy to recite a story he said 1,000,000 times again. Like, he's a gem, that one.
He really is.
Not bad to look at either, you know?
I am a straight male, and I still would like, the eyes pull me in every time. I don't know what it is. I can't take my eyes off them. All right, Samantha, this book is called I Was Feeling Epic, an oral history of the Vampire Diaries. I mean, I think anybody who loves TV, anybody who loves the Vampire Diaries, you will find this to be such a fascinating read. Where can people go if they want to follow more of your journey, if they want to find out more about you or the book?
Yeah, so I am on pretty much all of the social media at Sam Highfill. I post about the book a lot.
As you should.
And then, certainly the book is just all major retailers. You can find it on Amazon if you want something easy. But yeah, it's out and about in the real world. So it's exciting.
I know you work for EW, but do you have another project in mind? Anything you're thinking about now that you've done this one?
You're
like, I need to breathe for a while.
I do, but I have had a little bit, the last like 6 months, there just is like, I'm done with it and whatever. I would really love to write a supernatural book. That's my next item on my wish list, if I can make it happen.
Well, I'll keep my eyes open for you. Sam, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for your time. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I think we came out of it okay here, I think.
I think so. I think we nailed it.
Big thank you to Samantha Highfill for her time and all her work in this book. Again, it's called I Was Feeling Epic, an oral history of the Vampire Diaries. The book is available now wherever you get your books, and I'm positive that anyone in your life who is a Vampire Diaries fan will absolutely love it. And thank you to all of you for listening to the Adult Education Podcast this week. I really do appreciate your time. Until next week, be well.